All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the Walkout Network. It's your man, Ant Walker, here with another edition of Unleashed. Due to some technical issues, we don't have a fourth panelist today. Maybe somebody will join in by surprise and will totally screw up the post-production, but if that's the case, so be it. But for right now, let's go ahead and introduce the senior editor of Sherdog.com. He's a jack of all trades who's mastered them all. He is Ben Duffy. Ben, what's going on?
Hey, it was one hell of a weekend for combat sports. I'm happy to be here to break it down with y'all.
Absolutely. And of course, we have the man with all the numbers, the stat expert, also Sherdog.com. He is Jay Petri. Jay, what's going on, brother?
This was one hell of a weekend of fights. There was a whole lot that happened this weekend. Just in terms of fights that occurred, and we had to watch them. So, with that in mind, stat of the week. 28 fights went the distance in the combined events of the UFC Auckland, Bellator 239, Bellator 240, and Ryzen 21. So if you do the math there, if you want to get an extra bonus stat, 7 hours and 10 minutes of fights, just in terms of fights that went the distance this weekend. So there was a lot of content this weekend.
Yeah, that's it was a marathon of combat sports. This was actually one of those weekends where, as much as I'm a fan of this stuff, part of me was kind of happy that I don't have an official position somewhere to where I have to watch everything, because I was actually able to get some stuff around the house done, got to spend a little time with my son, and then watch Wilder Fury with Matt Hunter of Mixed Combat Radio, and we got to broadcast around that event. So I can't complain, but man, so I guess, Jay, I'm going to have to one-up you here on the stat of the week, if you don't mind me. So my stat of the week is two. And the number 2, because it takes 2 fights to lose in a row in order to get a title shot in the UFC. Henry Cejudo will be putting his belt up against Jose Aldo for, I believe that's UFC 250. And that was announced as official news today. So, fellas, I just want to get an immediate reaction to this news. Quite frankly, more so, I think we can all agree this is going to be a fun fight as far as styles are concerned, as far as the matchup itself. But from a meritocracy standpoint, how do we feel about this?
Not good.
No, not good at all.
Not good. Obviously, Aldo has not done anything to earn this in the cage with his recent exploit. So this is banking entirely on his former greatness and his former accomplishments and whatever name value he has through a decade of his own boss, like trying to tell us he was all shit. But his greatness was not achieved at this weight class. And the time that he appeared there, he did not look well. I can't even excuse it on the premise that there's an upset in the making, or it, or it promises fireworks. It promises nothing of the kind. This sucks.
So I actually, on Sherdog.com, because I cover news to the site, broke this story based on a report from Combate, the Brazilian news outlet, January 17th, I think it was, almost a month ago, that this fight was in the works and it was agreed upon, but it needed to be finalized. So this has been a long time coming, and it's been kind of stewing, going, ooh, I don't know how I feel about this fight, because it doesn't make sense from any standpoint. It doesn't, other than selling tickets to Brazilian fans in the Ibirapuera Gymnasium in Sao Paulo, Brazil. That's the only additional appeal it has, is that it may be able to sell out a Brazilian stadium like Henry Cejudo versus Petr Yan or Aljo Sterling would not be able to. That's it. It's ticket sales, because Jose Aldo doesn't really have a history of large pay-per-view draws either. Granted, his sample size is greater than a Petr Yan or an Aljo Sterling, because they've never had the chance to headline a pay-per-view. So how can you possibly know how they're going to sell before you allow them to sell a card? So the UFC is banking on Aldo. Oh yeah, that guy was awesome. Maybe he'll fight that guy who's saying dumb things on Twitter. I don't know. I don't know what Henry Cejudo's up to lately, but it's saying racist, sort of almost borderline offensive content, but he's been doing that for a while now. So that's his appeal, I guess. What happens if Jose Aldo wins this fight? We all look around and go, so Jose Aldo is now the bantamweight champion for real. Does he get an immediate? Does Cejudo fight him for the title in a rematch? Does Marlon Moraes, the man who just beat him, fight for a rematch for the title? He has not won a fight at 135 pounds, and it isn't even he's changing weight classes to get a title fight. Like Frankie Edgar moved down to fight Jose Aldo after being the lightweight champion. It's not even that. He lost the fight at bantamweight. Whether it was close or not, yeah, okay, fine. But he lost the fight. And so he's getting a title fight. So now we have two champions who are fighting challengers that have lost their last two fights that have both showed public issues with weight. So I don't know. If this is the direction the UFC is heading, I don't know. Man, it doesn't make sense anymore. But maybe that's just me. I don't know. What do you think? Ant, what do you think? What do you think about this fight?
I'm not feeling it. I'm just not feeling it. Of course, we can acknowledge that would be a good fight as far as just the action itself would go. It's kind of one of those almost like fantasy matchups that you'd play in a video game. Like I could see you taking off the weight class restrictions in UFC 3 and putting Cejudo and Aldo together and just seeing what happens. That sounds fun. But when you have legitimate contenders in Aljamain Sterling and Petr Yan sitting there, doesn't really make a lot of sense. Like I get in certain circumstances where you don't really have a clear-cut contender next, but you have two sitting right there, and also too that there is some sort of legitimate heat between Cejudo and the two other parties. Like there's actually some sort of back and forth that has been getting pumped on on the official social media accounts and everything. Like there's some traction to this. So I'm not understanding why we just have to throw everything out the window and go for Aldo. The only thing I could say, and I think this is playing off of what you said, Jay, where it's more about having a date in Brazil. This is a byproduct of them plugging in whoever they can fit into predetermined slots.
Yep.
We have this event in Brazil. It's going to be a pay-per-view. Oh man, we need a headliner. Yep. Oh yeah, what's Aldo up to? He almost came close to winning his bantamweight fight. So let's go ahead and put him into a title shot because it's in Brazil. That's the only thing that makes any logical sense. And that isn't very logical thinking in my opinion. So,
and he lost to the guy who lost to the guy. You know what I mean? He lost to Marlon Moraes, who lost to Henry Cejudo.
It's really makes no sense at this point. So I don't think, and then when you pair that up with Israel Adesanya fighting Yoel Romero coming up in a couple of weeks, it makes even less sense. It's like, okay, now we're setting a precedent where you lose two fights in a row, and now you are the next title challenger. This is anarchy, and also too, one thing I want to address, because I've seen kind of the contrarian point of view of this, where they say, oh, it's not a big deal. This has been going on. And they'll cite Chael Sonnen challenging John Jones, or Randy Couture and Tim Sylvia, something like that. You'll see those, but the reason why those stand out is because they are the exception and not the rule.
Right.
How many title fights take place a year, and how many of them are between, or how many of them have the challenger coming off of a loss? Doesn't happen that often historically, and now we have two of them happening within a span of weeks. Sounds like a problem to me.
We had 19 title fights last year. That's it. 19. Not a lot.
If I say that I'm less bothered by the Adesanya and Romero fight than the Cejudo versus Aldo fight, is that just bias on my part, or is there something to back that up?
Yes, it is.
It's funny because I disagree with both of you guys. I think that Romero is more egregious to get the title shot because he's missed weight in his last two title fights. In addition to losing two fights, controversial, close or not, he has proven twice in a row he cannot make 185 pounds flat. He made it against Paulo Costa, but that doesn't erase that he missed weight for the Whitaker fight. He missed weight for the Rockhold fight.
I see what you did there.
What did I do there?
Paulo Costa's nickname is the Eraser.
Thank you. I'm very appreciative of you picking up on that.
Well done, Jay. Well done. Which out of which one is worse? I guess the weight thing would make some sense about Yoel Romero, but Aldo has no wins in the division.
Yeah, right.
He has one trip to bantamweight. He is 0 for 1 in his bantamweight journey. He also looked like death upon the scale, and even though he did perform very well compared to what we expected, he still looked like death on the scale, and he came up with an L. None of these factors say title shot, especially when Aljamain Sterling is sitting right there, especially when Petr Yan is sitting right there behind Aljo. So, so fellas, I guess we'll move on to the other news that broke this today, actually, earlier this afternoon, and it's not official, but Ariel Helwani is reporting that talks are going on right now to secure a summer date between Conor McGregor and Justin Gaethje. How strange is it in a world that's very bizarre, very strange, a lot of weird headlines? How strange is it that Conor McGregor is the one we're talking about with a legitimate booking?
I feel so conflicted. I feel so conflicted in this matchup because of this. Here's the one part of me that maybe the logical part, I don't really know, that Conor isn't going to get getting a title shot. Okay, good. Thank goodness he's not getting a lightweight title shot for beating Donald Cerrone at welterweight. Thank goodness that is his only win in how long? 2016 that he won a fight and he's not getting a title shot. Hooray! Thank you, UFC, for not doing this. But at the same time, what does Justin Gaethje have to do to get a title shot these days? What is it? He has 3 first-round knockouts in a row. I don't even think heavyweights outside of Shane Carwin have achieved that feat. It's what he did to get to where he is now is spectacular, and to make him go through Conor McGregor, who is 0-1 at lightweight in the last 3 years, seems a little funny. But then you look at Tony Ferguson, who has a 12-fight win streak, and he's finally fighting for an undisputed title. So I'm okay with it, but I think I'm only okay with it because of the story we just talked about. I think I'm only okay with it because it's less of a worse call, because I still think that the UFC should have done Conor versus Masvidal or Diaz 3, do that kind of thing, keep them out of the way. But I understand why they want to do Masvidal Usman. Yeah, this fight, it's better than what it could have been, because I don't want to see him fight Khabib Nurmagomedov again. But I don't know. Duffy, what do you think? School me.
Okay, I want you, both of you, to accept this hypothetical. Assume that you are Justin Gaethje, okay? And I tell you, you can have one of two things. You can fight Conor McGregor. You will get $10 million. And if you beat him, you can go fight Khabib Nurmagomedov for the title, and you'll probably make $1 million in that fight. But if you don't beat Conor, there's no guarantee you'll ever get a title shot. Or, behind door number 2, you can fight Khabib Nurmagomedov for the title, or Ferguson, whoever wins that one. You'll probably get $1 million for that fight, but only if you win that fight will they book you with Conor McGregor, and you'll probably make 10 or maybe 20 million because it'll be a title fight. Which do you take?
You had me at $10 million. The thing is, though, yes, a Conor McGregor fight will warrant more money, but will Gaethje actually get that money? Let's keep in mind what happened with Cowboy Cerrone here. We all assumed Cowboy Cerrone was going to rake in some big bucks.
Right.
We assumed that Eddie Alvarez should have raked in some big bucks when Conor stepped up to fight him at UFC 205. But both of those fights took place under their old contracts. And there was no, at least to our knowledge, and nothing officially reported saying that they got paid anything more than they would have. And especially for Cowboy, very egregious too, that he didn't get anything off the back end, which is the worst part of this whole thing, especially when we're talking about an ESPN Plus pay-per-view that reportedly broke the million buys record.
Right.
So I will say is in exposure and even in style, yes, this makes a lot more sense for Gaethje to fight Conor as a great stepping stone to the lightweight title should he get past him. Fellas, let's drop some early predictions. How do we see this one going?
I like Conor in this one. I mean, for the longest time, like, because this fight has been talked about for over a year.
Came close to being made last summer, actually.
Yep. Right. It came close to being made last summer. And the whole time I was like, oh, man, this is going to be a nightmare. This is a nightmare for Conor. This is a guy who can wrestle if he wants to. He has some of the best leg kicks in the game. But the more I think about it, Justin Gaethje's MO is that he will brawl you for the first round. He never comes out of a first round unscathed. He will just get into the other guy's wheelhouse and throw down. And unless he's going to make a sharp turn away from that, you can't do that with Conor McGregor. All the silliness aside, he just has a roll of quarters in that left glove of his. And I don't think he can stand in the pocket with McGregor and play with fire like that. I feel, even though he and Cerrone are two completely different fighters, when I did the Sherdog Roundtable for the Cerrone McGregor fight, I said Cerrone has passed victory, but they all involve him getting out of the first round. I don't think he does it. I feel even more strongly that way about Gaethje. Gaethje is a bigger guy. He's a better wrestler. He has fantastic kicks. He never gets tired. He's tough as nails. But for him to bring any of those weapons into play, he has to get out of the first round. The Justin Gaethje that I've seen in the UFC does not get out of the first round against McGregor.
And you mentioned wrestling, and that's something that is, it almost breaks my heart because he's an accomplished wrestler, and yet he hasn't even thought to use it in any of his UFC fights that I can think of. It's something in his back pocket, but it's the kind of thing you never reach back there because why would you reach your back pocket when you have side pockets? He is a stand and bang guy. He's swanging and banging. He's throwing bungalows, all those other words. That can be his game plan. But the last 3 fights he's been in, he hasn't absorbed a lot of shots. This is a very different Gaethje, I think, than he's been when he fought Dustin Poirier and ate like $175 strikes in their 4-round fight. I don't know if this is quite the Gaethje that's going to stand in front of Conor McGregor and point to the ground like Max Holloway and Ricardo Lamas and go, let's do this thing. I don't think so. I think he's going to be more strategic. I think it's going to end up a lot like the Edson Barboza fight. I think he's going to surprise Conor. I think he's going to hurt Conor with a lot of different things because right off the bat, Gaethje's going to throw leg kicks. So unless Conor McGregor can very early time a counter left, like a check left hook, when Gaethje's throwing a big leg kick, I think that Gaethje's going to be able to work him over and finish him. I do. I think that Justin Gaethje gets the win.
I'm not even sure where my prediction should lie on this, but I'm very certain that neither man is going to walk away from this one unscathed.
No way.
Yeah, Gaethje is one of those people when even if you beat him, you're probably not going to be the same afterward. And if you're fighting Conor, you're definitely going to get your head pounced on at least a few times when that bell first rings. So should be very interesting, and it looks like they're targeting Vegas or California as the location for that. So we will be watching that closely. Hopefully, I'll be watching it real close if it comes to California. So
I hope so.
Yeah, that'll be a nice return to press row there. All right, so let's move on because as we did mention earlier, there were a ton of fights over the weekend, and the main event for UFC Auckland, Paul Felder versus Dan Hooker, ended up being a pretty, I wouldn't say a controversial decision, but definitely excited the masses with a back and forth action-packed fight. And Dan Hooker getting the judge's nod. Felder saying he is going to retire afterward. Fellas, do we think this Felder retirement talk is going to stick?
No. I have been picking my brain since Jay sent these questions out. And I'm trying to remember a time that a fighter retired in the immediate aftermath of a fight, like say, within 24 hours of the fight that same weekend, that had not talked about it beforehand, and it actually stuck for reasons other than their health. Like, help me out. Has there ever been
that it stuck?
That it stuck? That they No. I don't believe fighters when they retire in the cold light of day and we haven't heard anything from them in 2 months. Why would I believe it from a guy that's like concussed and disappointed and heartbroken and lost half his paycheck? And I'm not making fun of the guy. One of the greatest things about Paul Felder, both as a fighter and an analyst, is that he's an emotional dude. But I absolutely don't believe this. Like, I may not want $150,000 right now, but when the $150,000 I just made runs out, I'm going to want it again in a couple months. If for no other reason than that, he's going to fight out his contract.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. I can't think of many retirements in cage where I went, no, you're not. No, you're not. Stop. Just knock it out. Put your gloves back on. Don't leave him in the cage. Shut up. You're fine. You're going to keep doing it. The only one I can think of is when I saw Jens Pulver fight WEC 47 in Columbus, and he lost to Javi Vasquez, and he put his gloves down. He said he was done, and I went, no, you're not. No, you're not. And he wasn't. He fought like a dozen more times, but it was just one of those retirements.
Side note, it's shocking and depressing how many more times he fought and where.
Yes, I agree. I'm not gonna fight you there.
Yeah.
Anyway. Some of his fights were a little tough to see. Yeah, it won't suit him. I mean, he's 34. He's 35 in a couple months, I think. But the reason why I don't think he's going anywhere is because of the performance he put on in the fourth round. At the end of the third round, Duke Rufus in his corner was hyping him up, getting him excited about his family, about fighting for his daughter and everything like that. And Felder came out of that like his hair was on fire. It was a different motivated. He was gunning for him, and he won the fourth round on my scorecard handily. It was probably the most one-sided round of any of them, if you could say that. That he had that fire. Like, it wasn't the kind of guy where he's defeated and knows this is it for him. This is the kind of guy who's right there. I mean, I scored the fight on the SureDog.com play-by-play, 48-47 for Felder. I gave Hooker the first round, and I gave, Hooker, Felder. So, yeah, I gave Felder the second, fourth, and fifth rounds. I thought that takedown at the end didn't win him the fight, even though some may have thought so. But I got kind of a follow-up to ask both you guys, and I guess, Ant, you can take this one first because you're still going to answer the question to begin with. What do they do with Hooker now?
Hooker, you got to move him up the ladder. It's the only thing that makes sense. And let me check the rankings real quick and just see where, who's ranked above him that doesn't have a date yet.
Cerrone. Basically Cerrone and Poirier.
Yeah, I'd say Poirier. I'd give him Dustin Poirier. That sounds like an appropriate match right there. Cerrone, I'm surprised he's ranked as high at lightweight as he is. Mm-hmm. I'm very surprised by that. But yeah, Poirier makes a whole lot of sense to me. I'd even say keep yourself healthy in case Gaethje or Conor pulls out with an injury. There are a ton of options right there for Dan Hooker, and I think too. Now it may be crazy to put like Dan Hooker next to McGregor's name, but the UFC is making a strong case for the Oceanic region and developing stars there. And City Kickboxing has been one of the more lauded camps in recent memory. Doesn't seem completely out of the question for Hooker to step in, in case Gaethje breaks his ankle or whatever in training. It sounds appropriate, and I actually think from the standpoint of where you put these guys based on what they've done in cage, that fight makes a lot more sense than it might appear on paper. So yeah, Hooker fights Poirier, or he waits for someone to get hurt and jump in. Yeah. So all right. Now let's go to to another aspect of the broadcast on Saturday from Auckland. The former title challenger Karolina Kowalkiewicz, who was unbeaten at the time of that title challenge, is now 4 straight losses and apparent broken orbital that she suffered. Do you think that the game has passed her by, or is she herself diminished at this point, fellas?
Go ahead.
I feel terrible saying this, but I don't think it's a case of either. I think she got the title shot she got at a very opportune time. I mean, going into that fight with Joanna Jędrzejczyk, I mean, she was a severe underdog. The fight turned out exactly like everyone expected it to. And she kind of got there undefeated by dusting up on some less skilled women in like KSW and other European promotions, and then catching a number of other fighters at just the right time. She fought Rose Namajunas, Heather Jo Clark, Mizuki at the right time for her to fight them.
Mm-hmm.
Because the thing about her all along about Karolina Kowalkiewicz is that she's a very, very well-schooled, technically sound kickboxer who throws a ton of volume, and her game is never really dependent on super fast twitch reflexes. Like, I mean, she's basically the same fighter at 34 or whatever she is that she was at 24. But she feels like she will be a footnote in the history of the division as someone who got a title shot and strung together some really good-looking wins based on kind of when she hit the division in her development as a fighter, as opposed to the people she was fighting. But all the people she's lost to are people who would like wallop her again soundly. And that's only going to be more and more the case as things go along. So she's exactly where she should be. If the UFC decides to keep her around for whatever reason off of 4 straight losses, none of which were especially close or compelling watching, there are people they can match her up against. I mean, she can keep whatever gate it is that you're keeping when you've lost 4 in a row. I mean, that gate is the exit door. But her story that she posted afterwards, where she looked beat the hell up, she looked discouraged, she sounded discouraged. It wouldn't be the worst thing in the world for her to hang him up. And again, I'm someone who only says that when I'm concerned for the fighter's own long-term well-being. But she looked as though she was that way as well. So maybe that's what we get.
Yeah, I have to agree, because you look at the Felder and Felder and his retirement and his attitude versus his cutting an end to it. He was a very different look. He was bummed out. He was dejected that he lost the fight, but he wasn't the, oh boy, maybe things need to start changing around here. Whereas that video that Kowalkiewicz posted was pretty harrowing. She had the eye patch on, and she was just so defeated. I don't think I'm totally with Duffy. I think she's the same fighter that she's been, and that's a good fighter. That's a good fighter with a well-rounded skill set, and she can push the pace, and she's going to throw a lot of strikes at you any given fight. It's that baseline number. But the problem is that the field will pass you by, and the field has passed her by. I mean, in multiple examples of late, she has been defeated by fighters that 5 years ago she might have beaten them. Like, if she fought Rose Namajunas again, you know how that fight would turn out, judging by the trajectories, the way things have gone, that Rose has leveled up while she's been right here. So it would probably be a different fight. Look at Anthony Pettis for an example. He was the best around. Nothing's going to ever keep him down, but he's 4-8 in his last 12. It's the field they will keep developing. They will keep growing. The skills will keep improving. She has the skills to beat a Felice Herrig, Jody Escobel, that kind of type in the division. But she will be, if she stays on the roster, would be relegated to fighting Contender Series newcomers, people that are hired for local appearances, fight on a UFC Europe card as an undercard bout. But I just hope she comes out and takes some time, recovers, because I don't know if you guys saw the specific X-ray where you can see
Mhm.
the fracture in the eye socket, and it was. I mean, honestly, I hope she doesn't have to pull a Bisping to keep fighting. Like it was not okay. So I hope she recovers more than anything.
And just like that, Karolina Kowalkiewicz found herself in the main event slot in UFC Dublin.
Let's
All
do
right,
it.
so let's go ahead and move on. Before we get to boxing, which obviously was the kind of marquee thing that happened in the combat sports world over the weekend, we do have to mention 35 fights. Bellator put on in a doubleheader. Gentlemen, how much of that content did we consume? Jay, I don't think I should really be asking you this because you're kind of a madman who watches everything, and
Kind
on
of a
top of that, you do
madman.
official stuff for it. So Ben, how much did you watch of the 35 fight doubleheader?
I watched the first day pretty closely, the Ruth versus Amasov. I watched the undercard of that very closely, and at least had the main card going on in the background while I was watching other things. I completely ignored the European second half of this one and just trusted myself to pick up the highlights once my schedule cleared up this week, which it has not yet. So I literally don't even know who won the headliner of, was it Dublin?
Yep. Speaking of
Yeah,
Dublin,
of the Dublin card. Don't know a damn thing about it. Like, I am a professional mixed martial arts media member, and it has not even jumped into my bandwidth yet.
it's okay though. It really is okay. I won't take very long on this because I did consume every single fight, including the post limb. I will say something interesting that has very moderately helped Bellator's case, because I was going to go on a big rant and tangent about tape delay because it's stupid and horrible and it's 2020. What the hell are you doing with a streaming service and the internet out there? But the Bellator has moved fights onto YouTube, so you can watch Bellator prelims, postlims on YouTube now. These Bellator the European series you can actually watch on Bellator YouTube page now, so you could see the main card, you could see the postlim, the one postlim that was okay, fine, give it to me, I don't care, let me get it done with, I want to go home. The only takeaway I have is that Yaroslav Amosov is for real. I think you're going to have to watch out for this guy. He's 23-0. His biggest knock was he didn't really have good competition. And Ed Ruth is it's a good solid win in the division. They have options for him. They have fighters to face. He's not ready for a title shot. They have other guys in the division, Neiman Gracie, Andrei Koreshkov. They have options, and they should use them because this guy could be for real.
All right. So, good. I mean, we definitely can always rely on Jay to give us the deep dive on the events that some of us just aren't brave enough to watch. So, shout out to you, Jay, for that. Fine work as always. So, now let's just get into it because we had Deontay Wilder suffering his first defeat at the hands of Tyson Fury in their very, very, very anticipated rematch. I don't want to jump on this as the I'm not surprised Mr. Falcons moment, because that's kind of the obvious play here, and I know we joked about that before we hit record, but Ben, I'll start with you. What was your initial reaction to this fight?
I'm trying to avoid the word surprise, but I mean, I slightly favored Fury going into it, and obviously preface all of this by saying that I am not any kind of expert on boxing. I am just an enthusiast and an appreciator. But I did favor Fury going in. I mean, having watched the first fight and seen, what Fury had going for him, what Wilder had going for him in a rematch, I'm going to tend to favor the more technical fighter. The one that will probably be more capable of making adjustments. But then the weigh-in day came, and Fury came in unprecedentedly heavy, wouldn't take his shirt off. Maybe just because I've been burned too recently, but, I started thinking about Rampage versus Fedor. you know, and I also started thinking of the Joshua versus Ruiz rematch where Ruiz came in so damn heavy. And given Fury's history of taking a couple years off, having some admitted, you know, mental issues, packing on a ton of weight, I was like, holy shit, are we about to see Tyson Fury not care about this fight or not be able to get himself up for it and just tank? Combine that with the fact that Wilder showed up unprecedentedly heavy, but with an additional 15 pounds of solid Deontay Wilder. Like he is an element on the periodic table into himself. There was just an additional 15 pounds of Deontay Wilder. I was like, I mean, leading up to the fight, I changed my mind. I'm like, okay, maybe Fury doesn't have this. So, of course, it was stunning to see how he performed because, I mean, he did an amazing job on a round by round, minute by minute level. He made adjustments based on things that had happened in the first fight. Like, he nullified Wilder's power shot mostly just by footwork and by circling the right way. He worked the body. He worked the body really well. I mean, it was pretty obvious to me by the end of the second round, kind of which way the wind was blowing. And I mean, Deontay Wilder always has a chance to win any fight in which he is still standing on his own 2 feet. I've been on this show and said that watching him fight is more like watching hunting than watching boxing. Because no matter how the rest of everything else is going, he's just the dude in the blind with the gun, like waiting for that one shot. But I didn't think that shot was coming. And anyway, if you're watching a fight or any athletic contest, and the only chance one side has of winning is for the other to make a mistake, I mean, you know which way it's probably going to go. So yeah, I was stunned. Tyson Fury minted himself as almost certainly the best heavyweight boxer of his generation, our generation, that we're watching. And there are a number of fights I want to see him sew up before all is done. I mean, it feels like he's been around forever, and clearly he's put a lot of mileage on his own mind, body, and spirit, but he is 31 years old. Wow. He's younger than most of the people I want to see him run it with before he hangs him up. But regardless of what he does from here on out, I mean, he has stamped himself like the signature heavyweight boxer of the, you know, of this generation of the late 2010s, early 2020s going forward. It was a hell of a performance.
Yeah. You know, I got the chance to be, you know, near the ring for their first fight. And I remember walking away from that saying that in a rematch, Fury should win. But as time went on, you saw Wilder smoke a couple of people. He smoked Brazil, and then he smoked Luis Ortiz in a rematch. Then you saw Fury struggle against Otto Wallin. Right. You know, had that big cut. And then when he comes in heavy and he talks about how he's going to knock out Wilder in the second round and he's going to stay in his face, and I just like, this is lunacy. This is lunacy. He is going to get himself murdered in there. And it ended up being exactly the recipe that the doctor ordered. Like, he changed camps from Ben Davison as his head trainer to, I believe, Emmanuel Stewart's nephew. I can't remember his name right now, but at the Kronk gym in Detroit. Yeah. So he really switched it all up and did exactly what was necessary. I'd said in that first fight, Fury just wasn't offensive enough. He clearly was the better boxer. He clearly had the better handle on the technique and the momentum of the fight, but he wasn't offensive enough. Of course, Wilder's power came into play with those two knockdowns. But man, Wilder can't fight off the back foot. I think there's here's Jay, and please correct me if you think I'm wrong on this one. Now, we all kind of knew what Deontay Wilder brings to the table as a boxer. He hits incredibly hard. He's a physical specimen. But if you're watching him to pick up technique, you're in the wrong place. If you're trying to emulate him in the gym, you're doing it wrong. I imagine Deontay Wilder looking just like this. I just didn't imagine it happening Saturday to Tyson Fury. Am I crazy on this one?
No, you're not. And here's why. And first of all, I want to ask each of you if you can recall your official predictions that you had for the fight. Duffy, what was your prediction that you had? How was it going to go down?
I never laid out an official prediction, but I definitely favored Wilder going in.
All right, Walker.
I am the sucker whose pick flipped, and Fury clearly playing mind games all along, like talking about how he was going to do the fight, showing up that heavy, not taking off his shirt. He was playing all of us, and it worked on me because I favored Fury a week ago. I favored Wilder 3 days ago. Yeah.
Walker, what do you got? Who did you have winning in your official prediction?
I had Wilder in 6.
Yeah, I had him. Yeah.
Yeah. See, what I initially thought was going to happen is, especially if we were to believe that Tyson Fury was going to come out aggressive as he did, I thought he'd come out aggressive. He'd get sent back once or twice, and then start getting hesitant.
Yep.
And kind of have a halfway game plan. In which case, Wilder would just find the perfect time to spark him. But it just did not happen like that whatsoever. Like, let's get this out in the open too. He is now parted ways with Mark Breland, the coach who threw in the towel. I'm all in favor of Deontay Wilder getting rid of his coaching staff, but not for throwing in the towel. That's the one thing that seemed to go right in that corner. Am I crazy for saying that I think that Wilder came out there with literally no real plan, much less a plan B? Like there wasn't really a plan A?
We learned a lot more of Wilder as a person than he was as a boxer. Like he was what you see is what you get. He's going to try and knock your face off. And he's done it most of the time. And he showed the success when he dropped Fury in their first fight. But once Fury put it on him, like, what was it, the second round that he dropped him the first time? Then we're like, oh, whoa, wait a second. That was because I personally also had Wilder probably within 6, absolutely at the most by 8. But he would probably get it done because his power would be too much. He'd back Fury up and he'd hurt him, and then Fury would be kind of cautious and tentative, and he'd be able to stalk him down. Nope. And I am okay with being wrong because I learned something. But I did. I learned more about Deontay Wilder for who he was. Not only for firing his coach, for his assistant coach for throwing in the towel, which that's about the last thing that a coach should ever be let go for, because that's their responsibility, is to do that. Don't go out in your shield and I'm going to stop the fight when I want to stop the fight. Well, you're concussed. You're bleeding out your ear. For all we know, and I was saying this to some of the SureDog.com staff at the time, I don't know what's happening with his ear, but there's no good thing that can come of it. What is the best case scenario? A cut in the inside of his ear? How did that happen? I don't know. But I am, you see a lot of bleeding from the ear. You think brain damage, burst eardrum, concussion, all these kind of terrible things into your head. Plus the fact that Wilder was not able to get in his feet. He was all messed up during the fight. That's the time that you want your corner to be able to say, okay, we can see this from our own perspective and see, man, you're not here right now. So for him to dump them just tells me more that Wilder's ego is still was a problem here. And his explanation, Deontay Wilder blamed his conditioning and his energy on the fact that he wore a 45-pound costume out where he looked like King Super Shredder. And he decided to honor Black History Month was the explanation I read, and that it weakened his legs. 45 pounds weaken your legs? Pal, do you see Chemo when he fought UFC 3, dragging that giant cross with him? He went 5 minutes with Royce Gracie, who, by the way, Chemo was so tough that he wore out Gracie and Chemo lost the fight, but he wore out Gracie and made Gracie quit the tournament because he was so tired. But this 45-pound suit of armor you got on is wearing you out. You 231-pound giant. Come on. Who do you think you're fooling? I don't want a rematch. I don't want it. This, more than anything, killed any interest in a rematch for me. I don't want to see the third fight. I have no interest in it. I don't think the boxing community, the matchmakers, Bob Arum types, are going to do the right thing and give us the fight we want. So we're going to be forced to get a Dylan White fight, mandatory challengers and all of that thing, or they're going to force the rematch down our throat. And I don't want it. I don't know. I don't want it. I'm good.
Yeah, today it sounded like he wanted to exercise that rematch clause,
yes,
and the timetable is pretty narrow on that, considering the gap that he's got to make up. In addition to physically recovering from a severe beating that he took Saturday, it's also this gap in skill, and I think this is where we start pointing toward the corner as an issue here. Despite the fact Mark Breland did this smart, compassionate, wise thing, and the thing that makes the most long-term sense in throwing that towel, he didn't deserve to get fired for that. His coaching staff, on the other hand, has some serious explaining to do when we've seen the technical deficiencies in Wilder for a very long time now. Wearing a 45-pound suit doesn't take away your technique to fully like that. Like, was it the 45-pound suit, or was it the inability to move properly around the ring? Was it the 45-pound suit, or was it a complete lack of any sort of discernible strategy or the technical acumen to execute said strategy? I am of the mind that when Deontay Wilder first came across the good graces of his coaches, he gets in there for a couple sparring sessions, or in his amateur career, and he knocks a few people's heads off, and they realize, oh man, this guy has power, and they just stop teaching him.
Let's use that. That's good.
Yeah,
that'll work.
Use that. Just do that.
Yeah.
I think the strategy whenever Deontay Wilder has stepped in there has been, yeah, just do that again.
So he's the Happy Gilmore of boxing.
Yes.
They saw that he could take a hockey stick and drive a golf ball 400 yards, and we're like, oh, fuck it, you're good.
Yeah, like when the NBA was on that path where they would find like a minute bowl, like they'll go to some remote African village or something. They find the guy who's like 8 feet tall and say, and never seen a basketball in his life, and say, all right, you're in the NBA now. That's sort of what Deontay Wilder is with his power. And all credit to him, he's still second or third best heavyweight on earth. Like, he's still a great fighter. He's just not a good technical boxer. And when you're fighting a guy who has the style of Tyson Fury, and he's performing up to his absolute best, you probably will learn a lesson in boxing. I think that's what happened Saturday. So as far as what's next for them, I mean, at this point, can we just get Fury and Joshua? I think that's what we all want at this point.
Wembley, come on,
it sells out Wembley.
My God,
it sets a live gate record for boxing anywhere, anytime, any fighters.
Yep.
Even if, I mean, we all have an idea how it might turn out, I would be more excited to see Fury versus what's his name than Wilder, because I think Wilder would have killed Joshua. I mean, Wilder's strategy where, okay, I just need to hang around and I need to touch you once in 10 rounds is the perfect thing to take on Anthony Joshua. I still would favor Wilder over Joshua. So I'm more interested in seeing Fury versus Joshua anyway.
I'm with you on that. All right, so let's move on now to, I guess we'll officially do our I'm Not Surprised, Mr. Falcons. And this is, of course, the best named segment in all of media, and where we get to talk about something that surprised us the most from the week of combat or weekend of combat sports, whether it be pre-fight coverage, the fights themselves, or anything that happened afterwards. So I'll start with you, Jay. What is your I'm Not Surprised, Mr. Falcons moment of the week?
So in Las Vegas this weekend, there's this boxing match between these two gigantic... All right. So we're gonna go a little esoteric, but at the same time, I was most surprised by this result of anything. The very first UFC Auckland fight. Two women with a combined 5 straight losses. Pink slip fight. The way the UFC match makes these things, it's pretty clear. Loser goes home, winner barely hangs on, and then gets cut to the next loss. Priscila Cachoeira did the damn thing. A 40-second uppercut. So I read the SureDog.com play-by-play for the events, writing of everything that happens. I broke character. I very rarely do so, and wrote in a Mortal Kombat Toasty reference because it was an uppercut of uppercuts. It separated Shayna Dobson, if not from her consciousness, from her faculties. She was in a rough way, and it was an incredible thing to see. It's the ultimate way to save your roster spot with a highlight reel knockout that won her a post-fight bonus. Let's see, a couple stats. Fastest knockout in flyweight history for women. One of the top 5 fastest knockouts among all female divisions. A lot of us were expecting this to be kind of a drag. A long, slow, plodding 15-minute kind of mess that we have to limp through and go, oh boy. And then we hope that it doesn't ruin the card and start out funny. We were so wrong. That was the perfect start to this night because this was one of those cards, UFC Auckland, that delivered violence across the board. And I enjoyed it all the way. And it started with a 40-second KO, man. It was a beaut.
All right. Ben, what is your I'm not surprised Mr. Falcons moment for the week?
I intentionally did not think up a premeditated example for this because I was wrong and surprised about so much shit on the UFC card in New Zealand over the weekend that I was like, I will just take whatever's left by the time it gets to me. And sure enough, Jay took one of the ones that I would have talked about because I picked that one wrong. I thought, Dobson and Priscila Cachoeira both like to throw down. They're both borderline UFC material at best. I'm going to go with the one who at least has come close to winning a fight in the UFC. I was wrong about that one. But I am very happy to be surprised and to have been dead wrong about Angela Hill versus Loma Lookboonmee. Angela Hill is someone who, I'll try not to belabor it here because I go off about Hill anytime someone sticks a mic in front of me. But, she is one of my favorite fighters to watch. She is one of my favorite fighters to just kind of watch their interactions outside of between, when the cage door locks and when it unlocks again. She is a delight on social media. She has the best walkout music in the UFC. She's a black girl from the same area of the country I'm from who also happens to be a super nerd and likes anime and comic books. What is not to love? Having said that, she has spent close to 5 years on my top 10 Scream at the TV list of fighters. And for her, just going balls out and taking her 6th fight in a calendar year, breaking the UFC record, I was like, this is going to be the bad Angela Hill, all magnified. She's going to be her usual self who gets tentative at, any given moment, on top of being on a short turnaround, short repeat weight cut, and worried about her gas tank. And I'm going to be screaming at the TV the whole time while she tries to get the clinch against a fighter whose only real advantage is in the clinch. And she did not do that. She totally pieced up one of the most credentialed Muay Thai fighters in the UFC for 2 rounds. She kept Loma at distance. She nailed her with kicks. She refused the clinch when she didn't want it and took the clinch when she did. She out Muay Thai'd a Muay Thai superstar for 2 rounds. She did get a little tired in the 3rd. I think she probably sensed on some level that she had banked the 2 first rounds away. But she won an uncontroversial, clear-cut decision on short notice against one of the UFC's most rising stars. She exposed Sufasara's limitations and potentially her ceiling if there's nothing for her to do but strawweight. And in so doing, kind of minted herself, as a low-key, fighter of the rolling year type. I mean, I have no idea what she'll do for the rest of 2020, but if you just want to count the last 365 days, it would be hard to top what Angela Hill's been doing. So I was surprised. Rarely so happy to be surprised, Mr. Falcons.
I'm going to ask you something real quick, if you don't, sorry, Ant, if you don't mind. So, screaming at the TV fighters. She's one of your screaming at the TV fighters. Who are some of your other screaming at the TV fighters you can think of?
Elias Theodorou, Michael Johnson. Good grief. I have spent so much time screaming at the TV while Michael Johnson was fighting. Charles de Bronx Oliveira.
Really?
Oh, my goodness. Get up. Your esophagus is fine. Heel hook this man and let's move on with our day. I am not the man in the cage. And so I'm always leery about questioning things like heart and IQ and motivation, because that's easy for me to say. I'm the dude sitting in my armchair. But when I see a fighter that is clearly capable of so much more, and for whatever reason they're not doing it, I scream at my TV. That's what I do. It's what I've got on Saturday nights. And I mean, I make jokes about my theoretical top 10 scream at the TV fighters. One of these days I will write it out. But I mean, Angela Hill has the skills to be on a 10-fight win streak right now. And instead, I think she's 6-4 or 7-3 in her last 10. And all of the losses are just fights where she had avenues to victory and just for whatever reason didn't pull the trigger or got tired or, got rung up early and it made her tentative. So, yeah, those are the fighters. But Michael Johnson's at the top forever. The dude has beat Edson Barboza and Tony Ferguson convincingly. And then look at some of the people he's lost to, and look that he is barely over 500 as a fighter. Anyway.
All right. Well, I don't really have I'm not surprised, Mr. Falcons moment, because it was Angela Hill, and I think we've covered that already. So we'll just go ahead and move on. I want to skip around a little bit here, and let's go right to the speed bag. So, fellas, I'm going to give you each 10 seconds to answer a question related to some recent combat sports that we've had. Now, of course, I will answer some questions as well, and the time will be a bit different for myself. So let's start with you, Jay. First question. Is China the next country to experience a surge in MMA talent at a high level?
I'd like to think it's more than the three fighters of Weili Zhang, Yan Jianan, and Song Kenan. Bring them on. I'd say, yeah, let's do it.
All right. So, Ben, is China the next hot spot for high-level talent?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's been the case for several years, and the problem was just that they had nothing but Sanda practitioners. There weren't enough foreign fighters coming in and bringing the well-rounded
skill sets with them.
Yep, I got to flex my authority. It feels good. Thank you. Ben, I'll start with you on this next question. The UFC is pairing Shogun and Antonio Rogerio Nogueira for a third time. Is this the best fight to make for both men?
Only if they both retire afterwards.
All right, Jay. Is this the best fight for Lil Nog and Shogun?
Yeah, it's the perfect double retirement fight. Both the first two were fun. Why would this be one?
All right. And the final question, I'll start with you on this one, Jay. Jay, what can you tell us about the secret death move that Josh Favia warned the NAC about?
It was a stone cold stunner from a guillotine, and it was totally deadly. And I think I died writing the story.
All right, Ben. Any insight onto the death move that the NAC was warned about from Josh Favia?
After reading all of the documentation, I'm not completely sure on what it looks like, so I wish he would try it on himself.
All right. So
That
now
dude was jamming peppermint on Diego Sanchez's nose. My God, what is happening?
All right, so it's my turn to answer the three questions. I'll give myself 30 seconds, and the clock will start as soon as I finish reading the first question. So, is China the next country to experience an MMA surge of high-level talent? I say yes. The UFC has been on to this. Hence, there is a huge performance institute there. They are investing in the region for a reason. And also, the UFC pairing Shogun and Lil Nog for the third time. It's the right fight, just in the wrong promotion. This is Bellator all over it. And the last question, Josh Fabia's death move. I'm not sure what it was, but man, it probably started with his interview with Luke Thomas. I felt like my brain was totally rewired afterward. What a horrible experience. Shout out to Luke Thomas for being incredibly professional and maintaining composure during that.
I can't. I'm so impressed with that.
I take back every uncharitable thing I've ever thought about the guy. And I've never hated Luke Thomas. I like him just fine. But just the look on his face. Like, it's a perfect GIF, even though it doesn't change. That's what makes it funny.
All right, fellas. So we've got some UFC action to continue this long streak of weekends where the Octagon will be busy. So Norfolk, Virginia is the next place the UFC is going to call home. Joseph Benavidez is fighting Deiveson Figuereido for the strawweight title. So other than the main event, what fights stand out to you on this card? Ben, let's get your take first.
This is a tough card south of the main event. I mean, there are several get the Eastern European guy out of town matches on it. And there are two matches that indicate to me that the UFC is trying to kill the women's featherweight division as quickly as possible. Like, I mean, I guess give me Jordan Griffin versus TJ Brown, because that one at least should be a banger while it lasts. But outside of that, yeah, this is a tough one.
All right, Jay, any picks that you think are going under the radar for this one?
Well, first of all, I have to give out my ultimate shout out. WEC never die. Joe Benavidez is going to be the champion when we do this show next week. So you can mark my words and my prime picks on that one. But as for the other fights, man, this is a rough one. Duffy touched on it, but I want to look at it a little more. I'm genuinely curious the results of the Felicia Spencer, Zara Ferran dos Santos, and Megan Anderson versus Megan Anderson lookalike contest winner Norman Dumont. What's going to happen there? Because the UFC appears to be setting up these fights for the two to be the top of the division, to have a potential contender in case somebody looks good to want to do that. It reminds me of Lyoto Machida, Ryan Bader, and Shogun Rua and Brandon Vera, where they had the whoever looks better gets the next title shot thing, and Shogun beat the brakes off of Brandon Vera and got the next shot, because the fight doesn't make sense in terms of, so Zara Ferran fights Megan Anderson at a recent event and gets triangle choked and loses in her debut. And she, for her loss, gets to fight Felicia Spencer, the woman who submitted Megan Anderson. So, I don't know. The division is just so broken that it's almost a morbid fascination to see what the UFC is going to do to this division, because there's no rhyme or reason, nor can there be, when the division consists of 5 women now, because Kat Zingano's gone to Bellator. Because these fights have to matter. They jammed them at the top of the card. You know, I think Felicia Spencer and Zara Ferran dos Santos is the co-main event, and Megan Anderson's the 4th fight on the card. So these aren't insignificant in terms of how the UFC wants to market the card, but to what end, I ask?
When was the last time a fighter as accomplished as Zara Ferran dos Santos was in a UFC co-main event?
Greg Hardy?
God damn it, Jay.
Sorry,
Not only have you dropped a Joe Esposito, you're the best around reference on me tonight.
Oh, so glad.
You beat me with actual facts. I just want this show to be over. I'm questioning all my life choices right now.
If you put a gun in my head because this card, it's not a whole lot about this card other than the main event that I'm genuinely excited about. But I will say at least Ian Kudalaba and Magomed Ankalaev could be something. That could be a good action fight there. We'll see if Magomed can get past Kudalaba. I think that'll be a very, very, very big plus for the division, for the light heavyweight division. There, he'd be an interesting addition to kind of this emerging crop of potential contenders. But aside from that, this card doesn't really do it for me.
I just thought of something. I just realized something today. So I'm gonna try and boost this card a little bit. So Violent Bob Ross lost his previous opponent of Alex Munoz, and stepping in is Mean Machine Steve Garcia, which I think that was actually broke today. Now Steve Garcia, some of us might remember, he fought on the Contender Series, season 3 towards the end of the season this last year, and he fought. And he won by knockout. And he, as we may recall, was the only fighter not signed on that card of the whole night. And that's because he missed weight badly for a bantamweight fight. So he missed weight for bantamweight, moved up to featherweight, fought at the LFA, won by dramatic knockout, and is now moving up to lightweight to fight Violent Bob Ross. That could be a banger. But it could be.
Violent Bob Ross is kind of banger proof. Like, he looks wild and he has a wild name, but really he just wants to smash you against the cage and try to get a double leg for 2.5 minutes.
Hope that doesn't happen then.
It's UFC Norfolk is not exactly on the top of my most anticipated Saturday evening. So,
but you know what is though, and we're going to talk about this in a few weeks. The UFC Brazil Fight Night, I think it's in 2 weeks, is stacked. But we'll get to that later.
Yeah, we got 2 weeks to think about it, Jay. So let's go on to Buried Treasure, and we'll wrap the show up. And this is where we get to showcase a story that might have flown under the radar, or we just feel like talking about a little bit more. So, Jay, I'll start with you. What is your Buried Treasure this week?
So, Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship is truly the gift that keeps on giving. Whether it's events that happen that you don't know what's going on, or shenanigans that happen with the promotion and the president of the company, David Feldman, or the promotion signing the Iranian Hulk and saying we're going to have a tournament to have him fight that guy because, okay, let's do that. So in the meantime, this is from Paul Gift over at Forbes. A man named Ed Stewart is suing BKFC, claiming that he owns 40% of the company. Now, he and David Feldman had what essentially could be like a barroom napkin agreement, which is something that we run into sometimes in the legal community, where they would each split the company. They'd each have 40%, and a third party would have the other 20%. Now, he also alleges he put $250,000 over the years into the company, throwing like a $40,000 check to say, hey, sign so-and-so. Apparently, BKFC, rest in peace, was trying to sign Kimbo Slice for a while. So Feldman allegedly paid him a return check of $26,000 or so to say, hey, here's your ownership stake. Let's get this out of the way. And then allegedly, this is all allegations, everything will come out in the lawsuit. Then he gave him that check and then transferred the business to another entity to essentially kind of remove him from the equation altogether. And in the lawsuit, the allegations are saying that the BKFC events have, quote, lost substantial money. So they're operating in the red. And you know, I'm totally shocked here. The company can't be worth a lot of money. The company can't have a lot to work with because of all the high dollar amount acquisitions they're getting. You know, signing Bigfoot Silva and Gabriel Gonzaga, those guys aren't cheap in the scheme of things. You know, they're going to ask for money. Thiago Alves, David Rickles, these are names that don't demand high paychecks, but they're going to demand higher paychecks than other barroom brawler types that are wanting to do BKFC. It can't have that high equity valuation because all the debt it assumes to have. So how much could 40% of the company be? I almost feel like I should throw in to get 10% of the companies, because we did like an analysis to find out how much they'd make on the pay-per-view, because the one they did that was really big didn't do well and didn't make them a lot of money. So in the scheme of things, they can't be making much money. So I'll put in my 10% share for the company, and I'll buy. Oh, I can't. I'm media. I would have to quit the media circles to do this, so I can't do that. What a joke. What a joke of a company. How can you let this happen? How can this be a thing? How can you forget that you have a 40% shareholder owner of the company? How can it get there? I can't understand. I'm an attorney, and I look at this story and I go, how did you mess this up? And he did. David Feldman, the president of the company, at the time had no comment to the story, but didn't deny that it was happening. And there's a lawsuit. We're going to find a lot about PKFC, and it ain't going to be pretty. So, God, I don't want to talk about BKFC anymore. I'm sorry. You guys do your thing. I'm done.
I got my dividend payout from BKFC because I'm an early investor myself. I own 3% of the company. I opened the envelope today and my ears popped and blood came shooting out of my nose from the vacuum.
Wait, what's 3% of zero though?
No, it's 3% of less than zero. That company is upside down as fuck. Anyway, sorry.
Well, here I was about to buy a share with some Burger King coupons that I have in the kitchen. So yeah, there's that.
Use them on Burger King.
I might as well just get a Whopper and call it a night. Ben, what is your buried treasure this week?
Man, I have a bunch of things I could talk about, but I mean, in my usual pattern of talking about not buried treasure, but treasure that's so fresh that like it hasn't been buried yet. Today, the rumors were confirmed officially, and Valentina Shevchenko will be defending her UFC flyweight title on June 7th in Perth, Western Australia, against Joanne Calderwood.
Best of luck, JoJo.
Nothing of this is against Joanne Calderwood because she's awesome. She was a fantastic kickboxer. Really, I mean, such a solid kickboxer that, I mean, I remember back in the day watching kind of instructional breakdowns that Jack Slack made out of her matches before she ever crossed over to MMA. I mean, in that sense, maybe she's like a female Dwayne Ludwig, in which she is someone like so well schooled and buttoned down and skilled at the original art that it's almost a disappointment when they crossed over to MMA and just got busted up by fighters who were not as technically skilled, but just quicker to the punch, which is a lot of what JoJo's undergone. More importantly, in the larger scheme, this will certainly be the 5th straight fight for Valentina, where she is at least a 10-1 favorite. I mean, in early going, she's already minus 1,200 on some outlets. And it's kind of a bummer just because she is a fantastic mixed martial artist who is almost out of her time and having trouble finding appropriate challenges. You know, like what I'm thinking about most now is how we'll be looking at Valentina Shevchenko's legacy, a few years down the line once she retires. And Val will lose eventually. Either somebody will come along out of nowhere, or she'll just get old enough and lose enough of a step that some up-and-comer will get her. So it's not like Valentina Shevchenko is going to win 100 fights in a row. I'm more interested in what she does between now and then. And the UFC and the sport in general really are struggling to find it for her, because it's not as though the walls between promotions are what's really killing us here right now. Who's the best 125-pounder that she can't fight right now? It's Aljamain McFarland. Speaking strictly from my own opinion, she would destroy Aljamain McFarland.
Yep.
I mean, everything that makes McFarland's game work will get her kicked in the head by Valentina Shevchenko. So, there we go. It is what we were saying about Anderson Silva 10 years ago only multiplied manyfold. And this is not a Ronda Rousey situation. With Rousey, the holes in the game were obvious. I mean, I didn't pick Holm to beat her, and anyone who did is, much wealthier than I am right now. But you knew it was coming along at some point. The holes were there. Her game was not evolving. That's not Shevchenko. She is a well-rounded mixed martial artist, and just nobody has anything for her right now. So that's my buried treasure.
And you know what's crazy? I cannot think of another fighter that has had that kind of one-sided betting odd in their favor. I can't. There haven't been. There had Mighty Mouse or Ronda or Silva in his reign or John Jones. Like John Jones was a 5-1 favorite against Dominic Reyes, not a 10-1, 12-1. I don't think, and this is of course a very unofficial stat. I don't believe that there has been a fighter like that to have consecutive 10-1 favorites. That's just not how it is in MMA. So yeah, holy crap.
Well, and keeping in line with the promotions that just keep on giving us headlines, Chatri Sityodtong, the CEO of One Championship, has announced that he will be hosting a new edition of The Apprentice centered around One Championship. So they put out a press release Thursday saying that this new edition of The Apprentice will start sometime later this year, with Chatri as the lead. The contestants will be 16 of them that will be, quote, handpicked from around the world in a high-stakes game of business competitions and physical challenges. So the winner will receive a $250,000 job from to work directly under Chatri as some sort of cog in the One Championship wheel in Singapore. The challenges will feature the One Championship athletes. There'll be, I'm sure, a load of backstabbing and whatnot. I'm sure there'll be some B-list celebrities that will make their appearance. But I think the thing that we're not looking at, that's probably the most significant through this entire story, is Chatri actually is responsible for the chaos in the Democratic caucus in Iowa, because as the host of Apprentice, he has now officially announced his candidacy for president. So Chatri 2020 on the ballot. So guys, that's going to wrap it up for this edition of Unleashed.
It's Double Dare and Apprentice. It's Double Dare. Physical challenges? Are you kidding me?
Yeah, I just hope they drop them in a bucket of slime at some point.
Me too.
that's all that's going to be missing. All right, so everyone, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Like, subscribe, share, tell a friend to tell a friend, tell that friend to tell 10 more friends. In the meantime, you can find me on Twitter at AntWalkerMMA. I'm sure that's displayed below. The incomparable Ben Duffy at Benjamin Duffy, and the math expert Jay Petri at Jay Petri. So you can find their work on SureDoc.com. You can find my weekly column with Kristen King on My MMA News. And of course, tune into the Walkout Network for more shit talk. So you know what you got to do. Stay beautiful, stay positive, and most of all, you got to stay sexy. I'll see you when I see you. Peace.
Happy Pride 33 Day, everybody.